SEC spring meetings are happening as we speak, and there could be changes coming to the college football playoff. Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend Jacob Goings, host of On the Line Sports Talk on ESPN 1067. Jacob, today we're talking about the SEC spring meetings going on in Destin, Florida right now. Some of our media peers are down there right now asking the coaches questions, asking Commissioner Sankey questions. They're voting on something very important that could affect Auburn. I want to talk about what that thing is today and whether it's a good or a bad thing for Auburn. Let's start at the top. We're 1 year into the college football playoff. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's been a resounding success. I think the best teams got in, and honestly, I think the best team won the whole thing. But we're already talking about possibly expanding it, and part of that idea is straight seeding. They could be pushing, Craig Sankey could be pushing for more than one automatic qualifier for the SEC. Talk to me, man. Like, I think the SEC is in a good position right now. I am not in favor of expanding the playoff. I was in favor of keeping it at 8. And quite frankly, there were 5 SEC teams that had a chance to get into this playoff, and they blew it. Yeah. So if Alabama wins 5 games, they're in. I'm sorry, 10 games, they're in. If Missouri wins 10, they're in. If Ole Miss wins 10, they're in. At the least 4 teams should have got in, and it was in there. It was their destiny, man. Their destiny was in their hands. They couldn't get it done. Why expand this thing? This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants.
Well, there's a couple of things, and there's some things that we know, some things that we want to know, and some things that I think are ultimately going to happen. What we know is we had 10 years, we had a decade of the 4-team college football playoff, which was created because fans were upset with the former BCS system, right? Fans were upset with this computer idea. They were upset that it was only 2 teams and that teams like Auburn in 04 and other programs like that missed the opportunity to be crowned national champion. So you created this 4-team college football playoff where more teams got in, but it was based off of humans behind a closed door and not a computer-based system, right? So you did that for a decade, and it was pretty good. But we saw, and we knew it was going to be the case. Well, the 5th and 6th ranked teams were upset because they felt they had a chance to make it to the college football playoff and compete for a national championship. So they said, okay, we'll expand it to 12, where a conference champion gets in from the 5 highest ranked conference champions get in, the first 4 get a bye, and then everybody else will fill in after that. And it looked good on paper. And I agree with you. I think the 2 best teams ended up playing for a national championship in Ohio State and Notre Dame, but it just felt wrong to send a team like Indiana to play Notre Dame or send Tennessee to Columbus to play Ohio State and things like that. And so the SEC said, whoa, no, we don't want to deal with that. The college football playoff heard a lot of noise and got a lot of hate. And so they said, okay, no more automatic bids or no more automatic buys, but you can get an automatic bid. So now what we're going to have in 2025 is this idea of whatever your ranking is, that's what your seeding is. Remember how confusing and how weird it was last year, Mike? It's like, well, they're ranked at 7, but they could be in the 4 seed or whatever. And it just got confusing. And so that's what we know going in. We also know down here at these SEC coaches meeting or the spring meetings that are going on is Greg Sankey is trying to get as many SEC teams in the postseason as physically possible, starting as soon as he can. And that is with automatic bids, with an SEC conference to get 4, the Big Ten to get 4, and all the other conferences, they said, kick rocks. We don't really care what you do or how many you get. And so there's so many branches to this conversation, but expansion is inevitable. Expansion means more teams. It means more games. It means more revenue. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, that's where we are with college athletics, especially with college football. It's not about crowning the true national champion. It's about making the most money, and more games equal more money, and more teams equal more games.
Yeah, look, I get it. He's going to be the biggest advocate for his conference. And, at the end of the day, the ACC and the Big 12 seem to be pushing back publicly. There's some Greg Sankey put some things out there on social media saying he doesn't need a lecture about what's for the good of the game. Certainly, he feels like the SEC and the Big Ten. I had a funny moment on the road covering the NCAA tournament, my friend, where I ran into the Big Ten commissioner and Greg Sankey together. And these guys had their we're better than you suits on. And it was funny. It was actually a very funny moment. And this was at the Sweet 16 in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me and he goes, I told you, right? Like about, the SEC getting like with 9 teams in the Sweet 16 or something crazy. But it's there's a belief that they are driving the kind of what is the essence of college football. And if you're Auburn, is straight where you're at right now as a program, is straight seating, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? I have my thoughts, right? Because right now I feel like five SEC teams have a chance to make it in. I've heard Heather Dinich from ESPN said it at the beginning of the season. She said, don't be surprised if the SEC gets 5 in. Well, they only got 2 in, but they could have gotten 5 in, right? Those teams just didn't hold up their end of the bargain. I think that if you push for straight seeds and you only get 4 and you're Auburn and you're that team on the outside looking in, like right on the fringe, it could actually screw that 15 rather than them having a straight shot like they did last year to get in.
I think there's 2 separate conversations here. I think with 2025, we know that it's going to be whatever your ranking is, that's your seed line. Each conference, we'll talk about the SEC in particular, your conference champ will get an automatic bid. There's just no more automatic bye, right? The top 4 teams will get that and things like that. But I think from that perspective, Auburn is fine. But with what we expect to be on the way, the 16-team college football playoff, where the SEC is trying to argue for 4 guaranteed spots, I see where you're coming from, because with where Auburn is right now, the main focus is to get better and win football games. That's the main focus, and Auburn could avoid all of this by just being a really good team and being a top 10 team in college football. But we can't guarantee that just yet. And I think in 2025, the straight ranking and seeding idea will benefit Auburn if you're in the conversation come November, because if you're a top 15 team, you're going to be in the conversation. You'll be in consideration. Of course, you have to be top 12, but the SEC will only get 1 guaranteed. That leaves it open for more than 3, 4, 5, and beyond. Will they get that many? Probably not, but it at least leaves it open. Next year, for a 16-team college football playoff, where I think if this year goes well for Auburn, fans' expectations are, hey, maybe go win the dang thing. It could, but I think there's also something that people are getting hung up on too. Just because the SEC gets 4 guaranteed doesn't mean they can't get more. Will the committee give them more? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, but they can get more. So I think Auburn is going to be okay here. Your main focus is start winning some games and just be in these conversations before you can think about whether Auburn can get screwed or not.
Jacob, we talked about the schedule. It sets up well for Auburn this year. Hugh Freeze believes he has the roster to implement more of his system than he has the first 2 years. Quite frankly, we heard him. He said there were things they stayed away from because of personnel last year, which was disappointing to some Auburn fans. But this year, they feel like they've got their guy at quarterback. They like their running back room. They love their wide receivers. They like the tight ends. They feel like they've got an improved offensive line, and that's going to allow them to call plays in a manner which we should see more passing yards, more rushing yards, more plays, more points. So it's going to be interesting to see where they land this year and if this conversation shifts, because with the elimination of divisions, you know that your conference champion is your automatic qualifier. But let's be clear here, Jacob. The SEC runner-up is getting in.
Yeah.
Every single year.
Yeah.
If you're the runner-up of the SEC, you're getting in. And I don't see, without divisions, if we're just going straight up by record, that runner-up is going to have 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine a world in this 16-team SEC where the conference runner-up doesn't have 10 wins. So
it'll be close. Yeah.
So they've got, and you're going to have multiple teams with 10 wins every single year. Those teams will have a shot to get in. So
as they should.
Yeah, I don't see it happen. Now, last year set a precedent where we know now you can have a bunch of teams blow it at the end of the season and only get 9 wins. South Carolina on the fringe with 9, Bama out with 9, Mizzou out with 9, Ole Miss probably the most disappointing of that group, because to me they had the easiest schedule, out with 9. So you know that the barometer, at least after year 1, is 10 wins if you want to get in. Right. Well, what's happening in these other conferences? If you want to get in, get to 10 wins, and you're probably in firmly as an SEC team inside that top 12 that you're talking about, and in the driver's seat for a playoff spot. But is this a good thing or a bad thing for Auburn? Right. For a team like Auburn, and how could this affect Hugh Freeze's future if he doesn't make a playoff in the next 3 years? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite I in Phoenix City, Alabama. The Vibe Vault, not just barbers, a lifestyle consultants. I just got a cut yesterday, so I'm feeling ready for the weekend on a Wednesday, Jacob. You can also visit our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code Rapport to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever else you like, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. I got Richard dropping something special in for everybody who uses code Rapport, so please go visit them. We appreciate them for sponsoring the segment. And our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com. Use code Rapport to get 15% off your order with code Get Your Weight Up, and code TWR for $65. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that again. And our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com /WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights, and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Spring is here. Summer is on the way. You want to be outside making memories with your family around the grill, or just getting in shape for the summer. Golden's Cast Iron, workout, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for Auburn? I have to believe that there are expectations coming for Hugh Freeze in year 3. Something that's been much talked about, his infamous just make a bowl game comments that I feel was much ado about nothing. And we did our own interview with Hugh Freeze, and I thought he was pretty clear. They've got to be bowl eligible, but he understands they've got to be much more than just bowl eligible.
Right.
And I think that if you're Hugh Freeze, if you understand you have to be much more than bowl eligible, that means you need more than 6 wins. How much more than 6? And everyone past 6 starts pushing you closer to that playoff conversation, Jacob. Mm-hmm. Right? You start to get to 8, and you look at the schedule, and you're thinking, God, if they can pull off a couple of upsets and win the ones that they're supposed to with no inexplicable losses. Unfortunately, that's been kind of a signature of the Hugh Freeze tenure as a head coach anywhere. At least one inexplicable loss per season. But if they can avoid that this year with a better roster than he will have had almost anywhere he's coached, certainly I think that an automatic qualifier could be in Auburn's best interest, right? Get to 10. Look, I know it's year 3, and everybody's trying to temper expectations, Jacob, for this year based on what happened the first 2 years. But having a conversation about Auburn on the fringe of the playoffs is always a conversation that we should have been having in year 3. I honestly think with this roster, players aren't going to be the thing that hold them back from being in that. It's my questions are all about coaching, system, and scheme. What do you think here about Auburn and their chances to maybe pull off a surprise run at the playoffs over the back half?
Well, I think there's 2 parts to this conversation. The part that you just hit on, which is the team itself, right? The talent, the coaching, the schedule. Those things are all in Auburn's control. The things that you do to get ready for Baylor in week 1, the things that you do in your 2 cupcake games leading up to a trip to Norman, who, again, I think Oklahoma, I've made this very vocal here on my show, on anywhere that people will listen. I think Oklahoma is a dark horse in this conference. And the fact that Auburn gets them early is a big deal, but you get them on the road. So what do you do in preparation for a really good Oklahoma team who's going to have a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the conference with the tier? What do you do in preparation for your game at Texas A&M? What do you do in your bye week before Georgia comes to town for your first true home game of the season? And then, like you said, can you avoid the bad losses and start to beat the Arkansas and Missouris and Kentuckys and Vanderbilts of the world? Because, man, this is a time, you mentioned divisions earlier. Man, Auburn never saw a schedule like this when I was growing up, Mike. This never happened. You never had 4 SEC East teams on your schedule at one time, with Missouri, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and then Georgia's the other one. But you never had 3 of those other ones in there. You've got to take advantage of those games on your schedule. And then what do you do with the Iron Bowl at home? Can the talent step up and be what we think it is? Can the coaching decisions be the right ones to put their guys in situations to win? That's one part of it. Can Auburn do what it needs to do to be playoff eligible, to be in that conversation? We've talked about come November. You survive the first 5 games, you then take advantage, and you start building momentum in November. You do that, you're going to have a chance to be in the conversation. But in terms of expansion as a whole, it absolutely benefits Auburn right now because of where Auburn is as a program. Playoff expansion doesn't really help Georgia right now because Georgia was making it in the 4-team playoff, right? Alabama was flirting with it and winning championships in the 4-team playoff. They don't want to see it expand because that means more games and more they have to do to win a national title. But I've talked about this about other teams on different programs where, for Auburn in particular, and teams like Auburn who are trying to get back to relevancy, who are trying to compete and get back to competitive football in 2025 and beyond, yeah, expansion is a good thing because it gives you more opportunities to make it into the field. And in my opinion, on a broad landscape for college football as a whole, I don't like expansion. I don't like the idea of more teams making it because I don't think the more teams you let in, it means that there are better chances of winning a national title and that all those teams deserve to have a shot. I don't believe that. But from an Auburn perspective, yeah, it's beneficial because you're still up and coming. In 5 years, we could talk about it and say, man, Auburn's a top 10 team every year. Auburn could have made it the 12-team playoff every year or the 4-team playoff every year, and we didn't worry about it. Maybe we will and maybe we won't. But with where Auburn is right now as a program that is still struggling to find a winning season, yeah, we need all the spots available that we can get so we have any sort of chance to make it to a playoff this year.
Yeah, one of my more adamant arguments against expansion is the devaluing of conference championship games.
Yeah,
I feel like there's so much tradition, there's so much pride, Jacob. There's so much that joy that's derived from being crowned SEC champions.
Yeah.
Now, look, I get it. Every conference champion matters, but for a league largely regarded to be the toughest in college football, winning the SEC championship has always been just a badge of honor that you take with you for the rest of your life. Well, you expand as people start to maybe clinch early. I think it's a difficult conversation to have
They're on the way out.
expand, yeah, and look, if you, and maybe not even for the champion, but for those teams that have already won 10 games, maybe you're in a scenario where you won 10 games, but you know you're not going to the conference championship. So you're in the playoff, but you've got a rivalry game at the end of the season and you want to be healthy. And, do we see NFL type things happening, kind of week 17 things happening with teams resting players and just preparing for what I don't have an SEC championship to play for. Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, so, I think that's where this play-in idea is going to come in, right? With the 16 team, they've talked about the top 2 teams from the SEC making it, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6 would all play each other, right? So 3 would play 6, 4 would play 5, and those 2 winners would then go to the college football playoff. That would probably take the place of an SEC championship game. I think this is also where you see that extra SEC regular season game added, one of these non-conference games falling off the schedule to where you're still playing the same amount almost, but every game matters. Rather than having a couple of weeks off, those days are probably going to be behind us to where, every game you play matters. Everything you're playing for has something to play for. And I think that's what we need, because I don't want it to get to what you're talking about where it's like, oh yeah, I mean, Alabama's in town, but we're going to the playoff. We're good. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want that to happen. And some say it will, some say it won't, but I think that's where we're headed.
Before we get out of here, one wild thought, Jacob. So if we're saying we want those games to matter at the end of the season, and because they get this right in basketball, what we saw Auburn basketball at the end of the season was they had clinched the regular season crown, and while they lost their last 2 games, those games essentially they wanted to win those games, and trust me, they wanted to win those games, but it didn't matter a whole lot of a hoot of nothing because they had all but clinched the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament with 2 games left in the regular season. Could we see them split the football crown with regular season and like championship game? You know what I mean? I know it's not a tournament, but could we see them maybe do something like that on the football side? It would be weird, but I think that you and I can both agree, unless you're an Alabama fan, and your morals are shifty, that in basketball, the regular season crown is the most coveted of the 2.
Yep.
Right? The tournament,
it's not rewarded that way, but it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that the regular season champions that's the better championship. Yep. I was the best team over the course of an entire season versus I was the hottest team in a tournament where it's a single elimination. And, I feel like whoever has that best record in football at the end of the season, that's what we should be celebrating. If we're going to make all these changes, like you said, with plans and stuff, it'll be interesting to see if they come up with something or if they even think about that at this juncture. But hey, we're thinking about it at this juncture. Jacob Goins, wanted to thank you for joining me as always. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can listen Monday through Friday, ESPN 106.7 if you're in Auburn, Opelika on your radio dial, or if you're across the state, across the country, ESPNAU.com. We have 7 straight hours of local sports talk radio Monday through Friday, so check that out. We're on the air 2 to 4, ESPNAU.com.
Guys, do me a favor. If you're watching this on replay and you want to support the work that we're doing, do me a favor, smash that super thanks button. This is a great way to support the content that we're doing. I'll be at SEC Media Days in Atlanta. Jacob will be there as well, too. We'll have him on live from the College Football Hall of Fame. So we appreciate you guys for supporting the work that we do. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.